Um, well, I think first off, my passion for the starting point for my creativity is born from um, professional jealousy. Both my wife and my brother-in-law work in consumer and publicity PR, so I see them doing fun stuff all the time, and I just want a slice of the cake. I really appreciate the value of creative ideas and the role that they play in selling things, whether that's a consumer product or a business to business product. And I think we can all do better. I think we can. I think in B2B we can all do better. I think we can exercise our creative brains a bit more to bring more value to our clients beyond what we do from on a day-to-day basis, and probably the same things that we've been doing over and over again for years. So for me, it's about taking some of those learnings and best practices from other areas, building them into B2B, becoming more valuable for our clients, and also having a lot more fun ourselves while we're doing it. I think what they do extremely well is take really interesting insights about audiences, about in markets, and build them into creative processes and programs so that the creative is linked inherently with the insight. So um, the effect of the creative is to stimulate an emotion in the end audience through an insight that everybody can recognize. We are an insights-driven PR agency. We work a lot with huge volumes of data and spreadsheets and analyst firms and God knows what else to create those insights in the first place. The next step is to link those insights into creative campaigns, not just traditional tried and tested media relations driven campaigns, although there's a place for tried and tested, for has that name for a reason, but into other areas, so that those insights become real emotional triggers for customers to buy product, buy B2B solutions, whatever they may be. But I think one of the challenges we face obviously is that in a B2B environment, clients tend to be conservative with a small c. They're not used to this kind of behaviour. They're a bit traditional themselves, and they're always a little bit more risk averse than consumer agencies. So what we need to do, and I think maybe not to disrespect anything my wife and co do, is we need to be better at proving the value of that creativity and the measurement that we can derive from any campaign that we produce. B2B people care inherently about the hard numbers, sales, ROI, attracting investment, whatever it might be. And we need to make sure that our creative campaigns can actually generate the results that they want to see, not just opportunities to see or total number of engagements. That's not a metric they're going to care much about. We've worked really hard to develop a 5-step process, and we've tried it. We've tested it with a few little campaigns here and there, a few clients, and we've built some things around that as well for the agency as a whole. The process sits within our existing framework for how we work with clients. Every agency does things a little bit differently. Every agency engages with its clients a little bit differently. But really, it starts with objective setting and smart objectives, so that we know from the outset what we're trying to achieve. We then go through an insights process that I talked about, and actually that's probably the bulk of the work, is deriving those insights into a campaign, and then taking those insights and doing a creative. Ultimately, as I said, the measurement really matters. So we go through an editing process to make sure that our ideas are going to be able to yield the metrics and the measures that clients need to prove the value of the campaign, which ultimately makes it easier to sell. So we've created that process. Everybody that joins the company has an induction into that process, so they can see how it works, even if they don't use it immediately, even if they're not involved in something immediately. We also have weekly creativity clinics, which is like an open door for people to come and talk about ideas or challenges they may be facing. And I think actually that's a key point. Quite often we have some communications challenges. Clients may have communications challenges that can't really be solved or won't really be solved with the traditional methods. So actually creativity can play a part there in overcoming those challenges. So that clinic forms that function where we can get together and talk about things, but also just share ideas, share funny things we've seen or great stories we've heard, or ideas of great campaigns that we've all engaged with. And then I think that the other really important thing to us is, amongst our 5 company values is one of which is curiosity. And curiosity is about having your eyes and your ears open all the time to new things, being interested in stuff. And the more stuff you're open to, the more stuff you absorb, the more ideas you have, and the more thoughts are stimulated. And if we can share those internally as part of our curiosity value, then we will all benefit in a creative environment. I think there's an inherent conservatism in B2B, which means that we probably don't offer up ideas as readily as we might to clients. And I think if I was to have a chat with myself 15, 20 years ago, I would say, if you have an idea, share it. Tell somebody about it, tell a client about it, involve other people in that idea, brainstorm that idea, beat it up a little bit and see what you can do with it. It may not work, but you never know until you try. So there's a sort of confidence thing in it, I think. And I think that I have always been a curious person. I've always just picked up random books or watched random documentaries on TV. Partially because I might be interested in the topic, but I think also because I think there's a lot of stuff that's just really interesting, inherently interesting. And I think taking those ideas in, readily taking those ideas in and being open to those ideas, and then rebuilding them and reshaping them to creative ideas that can be used, and connecting the dots with clients and work situations, is a really useful thing to do. That's not to big myself up, but it's just to say, keep your eyes and ears open. Absorb information that you can then join the dots and build into ideas, and then share them, and that sharing is vital. I think you can't be perfectly creative on your own. I think you need to work with other people, including clients, and make them part of the journey as well. I think it's absolutely pure collaboration. I think of course you need your clients' trust to give you ideas. So I wouldn't make the first thing you ever do with your brand new client is to sell a creative idea. I think you need to build up some trust first. But collaborating on the idea is extremely valuable. If they can see that they have a role in adding something or morphing something in that idea, being actually part of that creative process, then it becomes much easier to sell, frankly. They'll know how something will work better inside their company. They'll know what kind of reaction it will get, whether it's renegade, whether it's conservative, whether it's appropriate, and obviously the budget holders, so they'll have an idea about whether something is going to be affordable. So you can't do it without clients. You absolutely have to have their involvement. But I think the other wonderful thing about having them collaborate on an idea is, if it's successful, they share in that glory too. So you become a full team, not just the agency team, but the client side as well. And you all share in that creation, and you all share in that success. So that collaboration, I think, is absolutely vital. You can't do it at arm's length. You can't say, I have an idea, please buy it, without any kind of buy-in from them. I do think that's the case, but I also think that we have to kind of get away from this idea that it's a them and us situation, or more specifically, a work thing and not a work thing, or a business thing and not a business thing. We're all humans at the end of the day, and we are all triggered, emotionally by certain things, and just because you work in a technology PR agency, or just because you work in a technology firm or a B2B firm, doesn't mean that you stop being emotional and you stop being human. So I think being able to share those emotions with clients also helps, get them involved in the creativity. Imagine if this was you. Imagine if this is, this was an idea that was put in front of you. How would you respond? How would you react? And often they'll say, "Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense to me." Or I don't agree because that's not an emotion I would have, but I might have this emotion instead. And so, so don't forget that clients are humans, and don't forget that they behave emotionally the same way as everybody else. Just because they've just because they're in a tech environment. And I think the other thing actually that and I mentioned it earlier, that the other thing that really matters in B2B is the hard numbers, right? It's not opportunities to see, it's not number of engagements, it's not necessarily hundreds of pieces of coverage. It's how are we going to sell this? What will the results be? Where's the investment going to come from? How many investors am I going to attract? How do I recruit staff if that's the challenge that's been set? Those are hard numbers, and so if you can work with clients in your creative campaigns to show those metrics, then the whole thing becomes easier to buy, easier to sell, easier to buy, and easier for the client to sell internally. The creative process could be extraordinarily short. It could be a day, or it can be weeks. And in those weeks examples that we've tried, we're sharing ideas with clients without them really knowing it. So well, we've read this and we saw this, and we think people might respond like this to that. And how do you feel about that? And actually, inadvertently, they're taking part in the process. Sometimes it's more overt, and we might say, "We've had this idea. What do you think?" But they're involved in that process before anything's actually finalized, But it is part of that journey. It is part of that 5-step continuum from objective at one end through insights and creative in the middle to results and measurement and metrics at the end. I think there is a balance to be struck, and as I've said before, sometimes the technology is the thing you need to sell, and you just have to suck it up really and get on with it. It's that may be the biggest differentiator a client has. But I don't, I think we're all encouraged in writing is often where it starts. When we're writing articles or blogs or byline articles for clients, think about how you can talk about this technology in an imaginative way. Think about its own impact. Think about its value. And I think that's the start of a creative storytelling process, actually. So for our guys and for clients themselves, it's finding that balance. It's finding the balance between just having to get on with the job and talk about the technology. That matters. We live and breathe it. That's why we're successful, I think. But also finding those opportunities and spotting those opportunities and saying, actually, I could talk about this payment solution, or I could talk about this, telecoms infrastructure in a new way. I can contextualize it with experiences that people have on a day-to-day basis. I can talk about it with analogies. I can imagine what it might become in the future, and all of those ways of looking at a particular technology or a technology solution can yield creative ideas that may go on to become fully fledged creative campaigns. Look, there's nothing wrong with tried and tested ideas. I think probably when we're talking about tried and tested in B2B, we're talking about very traditional media relations activities, content campaigns, press tours, all of that kind of stuff, right? And it's expanded into things like blogs and social media and all the rest of it. But it doesn't really do a lot for that bigger storytelling piece. I think this sort of longer term storytelling piece. And I think, in consumer PR, I get really frustrated with those kind of campaigns, those stunts, if you like, that look great and they have a moment of sunshine and a big, poof of magic dust and stuff, and then vanish into obscurity because they don't really drive any value. And they're very, very hard to measure any impact. It gets people talking about it for 12 hours and it's done, it's gone. So I think, certainly in B2B, we all need to work at developing that storytelling. And I keep saying it, and I'm sorry I keep saying it, but it's important, right? Our job is about helping companies succeed, not just fame, and but also fortune, right? And that fortune is about achieving some kind of commercial objective. So we have to be storytelling towards an end goal, towards that end goal, that end goal of commercial success, whatever that commercial objective might be. and that's not necessarily tried and tested, and it might be very, very different in different circumstances, in different cases. We had one campaign which was for a Wi-Fi provider, actually, but face value, everybody's got Wi-Fi. How do you talk about it differently? Their solution was going into hospitals, and again, their typical buying audience was actually IT managers and estate managers, right? The physical infrastructure estate of the hospitals, NHS hospitals. And it would have been very easy to take a tried and tested approach of saying, okay, well, we need to do stories about Wi-Fi, and we need to do stories about connectivity, and we need to do stories about, deployment and interference and things on an estate. But instead, we took a completely different approach, and creative approach was to talk about not how it affected IT managers' jobs in hospitals, but how it affected patient stays, and how being connected for patients was actually really important in helping them recover more quickly, get out of hospital more quickly, or stay connected with friends and relatives if they were in hospital for prolonged periods. And that's what that creative story became about. It became about talking about the impact of Wi-Fi on the end user, and it became much easier for them, I think, to kind of connect with that, for them to sell more, because they understood it. Everybody, to the point about empathy and analogy, everybody's had an experience of somebody in hospital, whether it's you yourself or a relative or a friend or somebody who's had a prolonged stay in hospital. Everybody could empathise with that story.